Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.
Welcome to the podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today I have the good fortune to be joined by Thom King, the founder of Steviva Brands, now known as Icon Foods, who started with a mission to help food manufacturers replace unhealthy sugars in their products with natural options. Thom, thanks so much for joining us.
Seth, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to jumping in, as you say.
Yes, I mean, you literally created an industry. How did you get started back in 1999?
Well, I actually ran into this. I was living in Arizona at the time, and I ran into this gentleman who had come back from Paraguay. And he had been trekking through the rainforest, and he had like all these different jars filled with, leaves and stuff like that. And he offered me some green paste that was in a jar, and I tasted it, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. It was probably 25 times sweeter than sugar, but I didn't understand it. I was like, he's like, yeah, it doesn't have any calories or carbs. It's really not sugar. And that was the red pill for me. I was like, wait a minute, how can something be sweet and not be sugar? And that was sort of the genesis for starting this business. I just was super curious.
Okay, so I know the longer version's obviously in the book, but so you get the green paste, you're like, holy cow, this is amazing. How does that lead to starting a business?
Well, when I tasted it, the thing that I would say the big idea that popped into my head at the time is, how can I extract the sweet constituents from this leaf? And that was the beginning of the journey, because it was like, okay, so how do we use like a hot water process to be able to do this? I had, a limited chemistry background, and this was way above my pay grade. So I just, sought out food scientists to be able to help me come up with a way to extract those leaves or extract the sweet constituents from the leaves. And then after that, it was just, once we perfected it, is finding a co-manufacturer to actually make it for us.
And then, you've transformed an industry. How did you start getting people to adopt it?
Well, I started it as a consumer brand. So honestly, we just, came up with different types of sweetening blends, using stevia, and literally, this was in LA, and just literally went store to store and had people try it. And, within a couple of years, we were in 2,500 different stores. And at that point, we created sort of this consumer brand equity that we were able to parlay into ingredients. And that was my whole idea. Like when I saw that leaf, I was like, hey, if we can get that sweet part of the leaf out, this could be like an amazing natural competitor to like aspartame or sucralose.
Well, I know it hasn't always just been a hockey stick growth trajectory. You've taken a number of risks along the way. What was one of the biggest risks you've taken, and what'd you learn from it?
Well, recently, I would say the biggest risk that I took was using our sweetener in chocolate chips. Like we were strictly a sweetener company and stuck with sweeteners. And I saw an opportunity to get into inclusions. And inclusions are like chocolate chips and sprinkles and stuff like that, things that you find, in ice cream, in, sweet baked goods and stuff like that, like cookies and bars. Um, so I basically came up with a formulation for a no added sugar chocolate that we could make into chips. And we found a co-manufacturing partner, and their minimum order quantity was around $1 million. So at that point, I was like, look, you know what? I mean, we can jump into this and, hopefully sell 200,000 pounds of chips that we were committing to, or we'd be stuck with a lifetime of chocolate chips. So that was the biggest risk that I took. And I was like a little freaked out about it and lost plenty of sleep. But we literally had all of those chocolate chips sold within 60 days.
Wow, that is incredible. And I love that you went from just the original sweetener product to now kind of the Intel inside. Everything's getting powered. So now, is there going to be a whole line, if there isn't already, of foods and things powered by stevia?
I hope so. I really do. I mean, we're branching out more and more into inclusions, because I just sort of view those as a carrier, if you will, for our sweeteners. Like everything we do is sweet. And so finding things that food manufacturers can plug into their cookies, into their bars, into their frozen desserts, that don't have any added sugars. I mean, we're going to be expanding on that. Like we're now the #1 distributor of sugar-free chocolate chips in the US. And now I want to capitalize on flavored chips and white chips. So we're going to keep expanding it.
Who inspires you? Who have been your role models?
I would say that my role models are not necessarily, wouldn't necessarily be, I would say, business oriented. I mean, my biggest role model was my grandfather. And the reason that he was my greatest role model is because of his integrity. Like he had the utmost amazing, pure integrity. And, and that's influenced the way that, that we run our business. I mean, we just do the right thing every single time. And I'd also say that, I would say one of my bigger influences too, that, I mean, it's a daily practice for me, is Ryan Holiday, who wrote, The Daily Stoic. And
Literally reading that right now.
so for the past 5 years, I've really practiced a lot of philosophy and stoicism. And that has been a huge lifesaver for me, particularly in the past, I'd say, year and a half, with the pandemic, and then with, these all of the supply chains for ingredients are broken, getting ships over. I mean, it's just been, one thing after another. And honestly, stoicism has really helped me through it, because, the takeaway on it is that, understand the things that are outside of your control and don't let them bother you. And the things that are within your control is your attitude, how you spend your time, with whom you spend your time with. I mean, these are the things that you absolutely have control over. The things that you don't have control over, don't worry about it, because you don't have any control over it. So that has been, the past year and a half, a big life preserver for me.
That's like, wait, let's expand on that a little bit. What are talk about how you set yourself up for success every day. What does your morning routine look like?
My morning routine is, well, the first thing that I do when I get up is I journal. I spend at least, I'd say, 45 minutes journaling, and I fill up a full 8.5 by 11 page. And that creates the foundation, because within that journaling process, I'm able to reflect on the things that I'm grateful for. I am able to reflect on the things where I believe that I can create change. And I also use it for a lot of data input, like, what did I do yesterday? What can I improve? What can I improve on today, that I did yesterday? So journaling is a huge huge foundation, and that's how I begin my day. And then, of course, I mean, physical exercise. So I usually go for a run, workout, and then all of that gets followed up with a meditation. I think that, daily meditation is the thing that will absolutely ground you.
You started out literally knocking on doors of stores trying to get them to try your product. What's the best way you found to market what you're doing?
Right now, I would say that social media. We're mostly focused on B2B at this point. So LinkedIn is a great source for leads. It's a great source for, presenting yourself as a resource and as an authority on the business. So social media for us is where we put most of our focus and most of our budget.
You've achieved so much success. What's your biggest challenge now?
Supply chain. It's like we have too much business. Like we have so much business that we don't have the raw goods to be able to fulfill it. And this is incredibly frustrating. Like we've got ships on the water continually coming in, but the ports are backed up. It's hard to get your freight over. And so I would say that supply chain is right now our biggest challenge.
What keeps you and your team motivated while dealing with stuff that you can't control?
I would say diversification. So we always, we may be a sweetener company, but I would say that we're more of a solutions provider. So when we run into a company that, say, is dependent on a particular ingredient or compound there's a shortage of or broken supply chain, that we're able to help them navigate that through reformulation. So if like one compound isn't available, we can help them reformulate into other compounds that will make their finished product identical, but it usually helps them save money and time.
If you could go back in time, knowing what you know now, to your 1999 self, what advice would you give yourself?
Have a well-defined exit strategy and exercise it.
So it's interesting that you bring that up. So what does Icon Food Science look like in 5 or 10 years? Where do you want to go?
Well, I would like to see it go on without me, because I would say first and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs, I don't believe by and large make great CEOs. Like a CEO is like a daily job that you do. It's a job. And entrepreneurs, that's all I've been my entire life. We like change. We like to create. We like new challenges. And so I would say that I'm grateful for Icon Foods, but I'm also looking for my next challenge or my next creative outlet.
If you were going to start another company tomorrow, what would it be? What would you do?
Probably biotech. One thing that I've learned from, this pandemic is that there's a lot of sort of science and modalities for treating disease and treating viruses that we are just scratching the surface on. And one of the things that just really, really interests me is CRISPR, and being able to genetically modify, bacteriophage, or being able to genetically modify RNA to be able to help us be able to, fight infectious disease and viruses before they become pandemics. And I've just been a sponge for knowledge about how these vaccines came out and how they actually work, in the human body. And that's the thing that excites me the most. I would love to have a biotech company.
Are you allowed to, and do you mind sharing how much stevia and stevia related products have been consumed worldwide since 99?
That's a good question. I would love to share it if I knew. I don't know worldwide. I know that it's a fairly vertical growth because, it seems like sugar has been very much vilified, over the past probably the past 4 years, like it's been related to, metabolic disease, and metabolic disease is the number one underlying condition for mortality from COVID-19. And so, I mean, I think consumers are more savvy now. They're reading labels. And I think that, you're going to see alternative natural sweeteners continue to be a trend. And I think that just is great, because anything we can do to reduce metabolic disease in this world is a major step forward.
What do you think have been some of the key personality traits that you've had that have helped make you successful?
Wow. I would say perseverance, and a desire to fail, because the thing that really, I think the thing that really drives me is meeting challenges and screwing up, because when you're successful, I mean, you get to have the spoils of being successful, like money and stuff like that, but you're not really learning anything. You're really not advancing. So as ridiculous as that may sound, it's like, I like to take risks where there's a potential for failure. And I mean, as long as the failure is mitigated, but I really, like to get myself in situations where I can learn and grow. And those usually come from the pain of failure and screwing up.
I love it. I think, The Desire to Fail is a book title. Talk a little bit about your book.
Oh, yeah, that book is kind of interesting. Guy Gone Keto.
Yes.
And, I wrote it almost 5 years ago. And what it was just a culmination of journaling. So I was in Vegas for a trade show, and, I was carrying about 35 pounds of extra weight and just really not taking care of myself, like, eating crappy, like pizza and cake and wine and stuff like that. And so I went to dinner with one of our vendors and just gorged myself, and got back to my room in Vegas, and the room was just basically sort of reeked of broken dreams and and lost souls. And at that point, I just looked in the mirror and I was like, what's going on here? It's like, you work with low carb and keto companies and stuff like that, and it's like, you're sort of an imposter because you're not really following that. And at that point, I think that the pain of my behavior exceeded the pleasure that I was deriving from it. And that's where I really, again, used journaling as a tool. Like, I just started writing down, like, what's the process that I'm going to use to make a lifestyle change. And after a year, I had a book, and basically brought it to a publisher, and they're like, yeah, we like it. And then it was out. And I think, like, right when it came out, it was number one on Amazon in that particular category, which was like bizarre for me. Like, I was like, A, I wrote a book. I'm like, how does that happen? And B, it was number one on Amazon. I'm like, how does this even happen? And I don't know. It still kind of amazes me.
Well, congratulations on not only the book, but your immense success. We know your time's incredibly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some of it with us. For our folks who are watching or listening, other than going to the grocery store and buying stevia, where is the best place for them to go to learn more about you?
If you want to learn about, like, our food science and our ingredients, I would just go to iconfoods.com. If you want to see my side hustle, the Guy Gone Keto line, you can go to guygoneketo.com, or you can find me on any of the socials at Guy Gone Keto.
All right. This has been Seth Greene with Thom King from Icon Food Science and Guy Gone Keto. Tom, thanks again.
Thanks, Seth. I totally appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We'll see you next time.
Do you need money to fund your idea, product, or service? Are you ready to take your business to the next level but need capital to get it done? Kevin Harrington has heard more than 50,000 pitches and knows how to help you make the perfect pitch to get the funding for your entrepreneurial dream. He's distilled the process down in his perfect pitch cheat sheet, and it's yours for free. Just text PITCH to him right now at 727-888-2100. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 right now and claim your free perfect pitch cheat sheet. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 to start funding your dream today.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.